everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books, and today I am wrapping up my reading for the month of February. Now, traditionally February is a bit of a slow reading month for me because it's the month where I'm back at work and settling into the new year, new routines. I work at a school, so I'm, new classes, new everything. So yeah, it's a busy time in my life in general. So my reading often takes a backseat. There was one year where I read or finished one book in the month of February. So it's usually a bit of a quiet month. And this was a bit of a quiet month for me, but not as quiet as some previous Februaries, if that makes sense. So what I'm trying to say is I read 3 books in the month of February, and I'm going to tell you about them now. And I'm counting this as a great reading month because of the quality of the books. And of the 3 books, 2 of them, I gave a 5-star rating to. So, to me, excellent reading month. I'm happy with that. I'm very, very happy with that. So the first book that I finished in the month of February was How to Save Babylon by Safiya Sinclair. This was one of the 5-star reads. It is a memoir written by a person who grew up in Jamaica in the Rastafarian religion. Cult religion? I'm not really sure how I would personally define it, given that I don't have personal experience there. But her experience in any case was definitely a negative one, in the sense that her father was very strict about how things should be in their household, and there was definitely some abuse that went on, as is revealed throughout the book. This was a devastating memoir, and there were points where I genuinely cried, and I was like thinking, no, like you could see where things were about to head, and I was there, I was drawn in. So the writing is excellent. It's a fascinating memoir, and I would highly, highly recommend it if you're in any way interested in the history of Jamaica, in Rastafarianism. Just to clarify though, the way that she talks about this, she's not necessarily being critical of Rastafarianism as a concept, as a whole. She's talking about her personal experience of it and the way that her family interpreted the teachings of Rastafarianism. So yeah, it was definitely a really interesting read, and I am excited to at some point reread this book because it really spoke to me just on a really personal level. I felt very connected to the story that was being told by Safiya Sinclair. Absolutely beautiful book. So that was the first book I finished in the month of February. The second book that I finished was a Persephone Books edition of Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield. Now, if you haven't heard of Persephone Books, they all come with this sort of a cover, and inside you get a really cool, the end papers are very, very cool. They also have a mission to publish overlooked or forgotten writings of women in the past. So this is that was the case here. This was just one that I came across in a second-hand store, and I always will pick up a Persephone edition if I find them. They're pretty rare here. I don't find them very often, but every now and again I do. So I was very excited to find this, and then I just picked it up pretty quickly. So I didn't actually include this in a haul video because I kind of started reading it immediately, and then I knew it was going to be included here, so I didn't bother hauling it because I knew I'd be talking about it again really quickly. Anyway, let's get on to talking about the actual book. So this is a fictional diary. I believe at the time it was originally published, so originally It was published in 1930 by Macmillan, and then this is a revised. There's the afterword that is included here was originally published in 1984 and was revised in 2014. So this was, I believe, initially written in a sort of periodical type of a way. So you were getting like an entry or a couple of entries every few, when a magazine or newspaper came out. I'm not sure which. So this was originally not published as a full work, I believe. Anyway, it was great. I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. It's witty, it's fun, and it was a great read. The only reason that I didn't end up giving it 5 stars was and I guess this is just how things were done at the time, but there is a reference in here to, so they have a cat, the cat gets pregnant and has kittens, and the dad of the family ends up drowning the kittens to get rid of them, except for one of them. And it happens really, like, it's talked about in a kind of a nonchalant kind of way, which was a little bit confronting to my personal sensibilities about animals. But, also upon reflection, I was thinking, at a time where they didn't have the possibility of dissecting animals, how would they have dealt with that situation? And it's not nice and it's not good to think about, but I guess that's how things were done as humanely as possible. But it wasn't nice to read. So I think if that hadn't been in there, I probably would have rated this higher, maybe a 4.5 or a 5. But yeah, because of that, it just kind of made me feel a bit not okay about it. So that kind of pulled me out of it a little bit. But other than that, it was a really interesting sort of insight into what life would have been like. So the family in this book, so obviously it was published in 1930, so this was reflective of the times in England in the 1920s. So we're here talking the interwar period, which is a period of history I like to read about anyway. And then they are a sort of, I don't know how you would describe it. They're like a family that probably once upon a time would have been rich people, but, it's the 20s, so times are a little bit more tough. And so they don't have a lot of money. So then how they kind of manage their household, and they've got people who work for them. They have a cook, they have a gardener, they have a couple of other members of staff. And then how they're sort of like paying for things when they don't have money is really, really interesting. So yeah, it was fascinating from that point of view, to sort of like an insight into what life might have been like for people in that position, but also it was also just funny, and the way that this couple kind of interacted socially, and like the insights they had into the people of their community, because as the sort of local landowners, they were expected to sort of be hosts for things and be part of the community in a way that we sort of wouldn't see as much these days, I would imagine, in most places. So yeah, it was just a really interesting insight into a very specific moment in time in history, and the ways that people kind of interacted. It was great. I really loved it. I would recommend, but just with that warning about the cat stuff. Okay, and then the last book that I read, which was also a 5-star read, was Orbital by Samantha Harvey. This was the winner of the Booker Prize in 2024, but I did not pick it up until this year, and I'm so glad that I did, because this is exactly the kind of thing that I love to read. There's not really a plot to this book. It takes place on the International Space Station, I guess, and we sort of jump between the heads of various people in the international team that are up there. And it takes place over several orbits of the Earth. There is a diagram at the beginning of the book that looks like this. And it shows how the orbits work. I'm going to be honest with you and say I didn't really understand the diagram, and it didn't relate to what I was reading in the book in my own head, which is not to say that it doesn't relate to what's in the book, but in my head it played no role in me understanding the story better or anything like that. So it definitely, I know because I read this with a book club, and when we were talking about it, some people very much related to that diagram, that map that was in the beginning, and kind of were able to use that to follow where they were, like what part of the Earth they were over at different times. So that was interesting, just to sort of see different ways that different people related to this book. And not everybody in the book club loved it. If you're a person who needs a lot of plot, this is not the book for you. This is very much a like reflections on, that sort of, quite well documented thing where people go into space and they look down at the Earth, and it sort of gives that perspective of, we are so little and unimportant, and yet at the same time we're super important. But it kind of gives you that removed perspective from life on Earth that we don't get to have if we don't go to space. So yeah, that aspect of it was really interesting. They also, different sort of people who end up becoming astronauts and cosmonauts, that was interesting too, just sort of thinking about, what it takes to be an astronaut or a cosmonaut, like the mental fortitude you need to have because you are so isolated and removed from your normal life. But also then, these characters are all kind of reflecting on their people who are back home on Earth as well. And I found that really fascinating too. I guess what you could call the plot is it's following the path of a typhoon that is happening. And that, I guess, is sort of like, I wouldn't so much call it a plot point so much as kind of like a touchstone throughout the orbit. And yeah, just sort of them observing it from space and observing its movement and location and thinking about what it will mean for the people who are in its path. So that was super interesting. I also really liked the visual observations that they had from space of the different continents, and then the reflections about politics, about life in general, about, the ways in which humans impact the Earth, the ways in which humans interact with each other, relationships, etc. So there were just a lot of things that these people were thinking about and contemplating and I guess because a lot of the jobs that they were doing were, procedural jobs. So they were fixing things, or they were going in and making their observations for their various experiments, depending on what their area of expertise was and what experiments they were running. It was sort of procedural work, which I guess leads you to have space in your head. Unintended pun. Have the space in your head to be reflecting and thinking, because you know what you're doing, you're following your procedure each day, and the more that you do it, the quicker and easier it becomes. So yeah, that was really interesting, and sort of reflecting on the kinds of jobs people were doing in the space station as well. Was really interesting. Anyway, I loved this. This is exactly the kind of thing I like to read. I don't necessarily require a big plotty kind of, movement in books. And I think the length of this, because this, as you can see, it's quite short, but the length of this book really, it was perfect. So I wouldn't have wanted it to be longer. And it was just long enough to kind of, draw me in and give me the things I was looking for, I suppose. And the writing is beautiful as well. So highly recommend if you're the kind of reader who doesn't require a lot of plot and it's kind of reflection and vibes. This is the book for you. So that's it. Those were the books that I read in the month of February. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.